Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, joined on this fine Thursday, afternoon our time, morning back home, by somebody who I respect immensely, somebody whose face I'm sure you recognize, Trevor Lane of Lakers Nation. Thank you very much for hopping on, man.
Hey, no problem, Anthony. Thanks for having me on. Excited to talk some Lakers basketball. Big one tonight. I think this is the biggest game of preseason for the Lakers coming up tonight.
Yeah, Matt Moore has been kind of compiling some of the gambling trends of teams depending on how they do in the preseason, right? And so, like, he fired off a tweet earlier saying that the teams that go that do not win a preseason game are like 7-3 all time, or they lose, they hit their under, or they go under their win total about, a little more than 75% of the time, moving forward. And, for a long time, it was easy to write off preseason results as, oh, it's just preseason. It's just preseason. It's preseason. But I do think what like Lakers fans have kind of learned over the last few years is if the team isn't all that competitive in the preseason, that tends to tell us a little bit about how the season is going to go. And that actually is kind of a perfect, segue into our first topic here. Tonight is supposedly going to be the dress rehearsal. The last game that the Lakers played in was the game where JJ Redick was going to unveil the team's 9-man rotation. And I was a little surprised at the energy that we didn't quite see from the Lakers, given that was the approach to that game. Is there anything specific that you're looking for tonight as the Lakers kind of show us what games are going to look like, at least in the early part of the season?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting balance when you talk about energy, because you've got, on one hand, you've got LeBron James, right? Where this is, he's been in the NBA for 55 years, apparently at this point. And it's going to be just another preseason game to him. Like, yes, the lineup might be a little bit different, but LeBron's not going to push all the way down on the gas pedal. And we've seen the Lakers historically, they've gone as LeBron goes energy wise. If he's fired up, if he's making all these extra closeouts, extra efforts, everybody else does too. On the flip side, this is probably their last chance. I'm assuming they're not going to play most of their guys second night of a back-to-back in preseason, which makes no sense, by the way. Why does that exist? They're not going to play them tomorrow. But so energy is certainly, I think, a factor, something that we're going to be looking for. How does this team look, assuming they play, let's say, 3 quarters with their regular rotation out there? What's the energy level? What's the attention to detail, which is a phrase that we've heard a lot from JJ Redick about this team, and really about JJ Redick and how this club is supposed to operate. But the energy is part of it. I also want to see if some of the offensive clunkiness is improved upon that we saw a little bit last game. And then the big thing that, just killed me, because there was such a stark contrast. The transition defense was terrible last game. The Golden State Warriors, meanwhile, I thought there were a number of plays where their transition defense looked fantastic, where you went, whoa, how did they get 3 guys back already? I thought the Lakers had a break on. So that's another key that I'm watching for tonight. It's, can the Lakers start to get back in transition? Because we're going to see this. We saw it last season, but teams are really going to try to push down on the gas pedal every chance they get and run on this Lakers team until they prove they can get back and stop somebody. So those are a few early things that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Obviously, there's some other stuff we can get into, but some main things I'll be focused on in this one.
Yeah, there was a play, Raj and I laughed about it after the game, but you had Anderson, whose nickname is Slow-Mo, running away from Rui and LeBron in transition. And I'm like, that can't happen. And like you said, LeBron is going to approach preseason the way that he's going to approach preseason. Rui, you got to beat Anderson back down the court. What have you thought, though? You mentioned kind of the clunky offense, and I feel like a lot of the clunkiness is kind of a reteaching of habits, right? One of the frustrations from the Darvin Ham tenure, especially last year, was the inconsistency with how often they were running sets. And it's felt this year like there's a real focus on running organized offense at a far higher clip than they were last year. Now, the system itself and the plays that they're calling, that can be, discussed further. But I've given them a little bit of leeway as it pertains to some of that clunkiness, because it really feels like they're relearning in many ways how to play basketball under JJ Redick compared to basically the same group, almost the same exact roster under a different coach last season.
Yeah. So the way I think of it is you've got which one is it? X-Men Days of Future Past, the one where Wolverine gets sent into the past. And what happens is he's in that past body. And then every time things get tough or whatever, he slips back in time. And then he's like, he doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know what's happening, and everything gets all discombobulated. That's what's going on with the Lakers right now. And I'm encouraged by what we've seen through certain moments, but you can almost see like out there on the court where it's like they're running JJ stuff. Oh, wait, there's trouble. Oh, shoot. Now we're back to Darvin, right? And you get this stagnation, and it's like they slip back. I think those moments are going to become fewer and fewer as they get more and more comfortable. I think that's a lot of what's going on right now with them offensively. And based on the stuff that we're seeing, the movement that we're seeing, the cutting, the screening, all that sort of stuff, especially off ball, which is something JJ's really highlighted, I think that those things are going to start to become more and more constant, and the Darvin stuff is going to go by the wayside more and more. At least that's my impression of kind of what we're seeing. When this team has to freelance, it's like they slip back into the stuff they were doing last season, whereas the stuff that we've seen that's new, I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I am with you there. It's funny. Last year, some of the stuff that they were running under Darvin wasn't that bad. No. Like it was. There were some interesting plays that they were running, and I do think that there is some kind of carryover that they're trying to balance there as well. Again, the problem was that it just wasn't organized very often, and that kind of gave way to a bunch of, I think, bad habits that had an entire season to kind of form and coagulate. And now it's a matter of kind of breaking through all of that muck and trying to just focus on the kind of stuff that JJ and his staff is focused on running. I was having a conversation with Tim Kranjus, who does the Lakers Exceptionalism pod, and we were kind of talking about the organized offense and the types of sets that they're running. And I think one of the things that the Lakers are kind of trying to deal with too is JJ Redick's own learning curve, where it's really different when you're identifying sets and defenses and pick and roll coverages and stuff like that from your and my perspective, where we have the entire court. We're sitting way above the court. We're watching it on video. We're watching on tape, and there's no pressure as far as our ability to recognize those things. It is night and day trying to do that from the sideline in the moment and learning how to, try to talk your team through those counters. And I think you combine all of this, and of course there's some kind of growing pains there. So, but even still, we knew that's what the situation was going to be. Like we knew that they were going to have to relearn a bunch of stuff no matter who the coach was. And then on top of that, they hired a rookie coach, not just rookie head coach, but a rookie coach. And now both aspects of this equation are learning side by side. You mentioned some stuff that's excited you to this point. Is there anything in particular, a player or an approach to the game outside of LeBron and AD, who we know are still quite good? Is there anything in particular that has caught your eyes? Like, oh, that's kind of fun.
Sure. Yeah. So in terms of just the amount of movement, the motion that we're seeing, there's times where we just see 2-man game, but we're seeing more often 3 players in motion on the offensive end, sometimes 4. We've got guys screening away. You've got guys cutting into space. That was great to see, especially it felt like the first 2 preseason games, we saw more of it where the Lakers were actually dragging defenders away from the basket, and then Dalton Connect would slip a screen and there he is right at the rim, or Austin Reeves would do it, and then he's firing a pass out to Max Christie for 3. It's that type of stuff that can be really, really pretty. We saw it a little bit with Jackson Hayes. I think got a nice dive to the rim on a screen situation last game, and AD has gotten a few as well. That kind of stuff when you've got multiple players in motion and that's opening up things. I want to see, and the Warriors are known for this a lot, I want to see the team making defenses make choices, make decisions over
Yeah.
and over and over again throughout a possession. And I think we've seen a little bit of that. I'd like to see more, but what we've seen so far, I think, has been exciting in that regard, just making the defense constantly have to make a decision. And then when they make a mistake, then you can pounce, you can capitalize. But to highlight one thing, and JJ called this out after last game, Rui Hachimura, his rebounding is up by almost 3 rebounds per game right now in preseason. And this is something that it's interesting because JJ frequently talked about him being a corner crasher, that he was going to crash from the corners and help them on the offensive glass. Well, so far, and it's a tiny sample size, the offensive rebounding hasn't changed for Rui. He's getting 1 a game. But the defensive help that he's doing there on the boards, and the Lakers have rated out as a really good defensive rebounding team so far. Rui going up by that many rebounds, I don't know if that's sustainable, but still, that was a big question mark. You know, Rui's a big dude. He's got a long wingspan. In theory, he should be a good rebounder. He's never been that over the course of his career. JJ's going to ask him to be that. Can he actually do it? So far, so good in that regard. So that's one key area that I think has been fairly impressive. Rui Hachimura, his ability to help on the glass. And hopefully that's something that continues, because on this team, they're going to need Rui to play bigger, I think, more often.
Yeah, I got the sense last year that the frustration a lot of times with the Lakers, people always think of NBA players as like, oh, we're adults. We don't need to be coached that much. Like, let us just figure out our own stuff. We've been playing basketball our whole lives, all that stuff. And it really kind of struck me in doing reporting on it over the course of the season. And then especially so far this preseason, how many guys are just like happy to be coached, happy to get a focal point from the coaching staff, happy to have communication consistently with JJ and having those expectations reinforced. And I think the guy who has benefited most from that, to your point, is Rui, where I think last year his role was all over the place. His playing time was all over the place. It was the guys who was playing on the court with was never quite, consistently the same. And I do feel like he felt like he was just kind of shoved into a corner and told, figure it out, when he's still young enough. He wants to be coached. And I do think he's really opened up to that stuff. And I was happy also to hear JJ really give him some shine after the game for the improvement there. You know, it's one thing to coach a guy and stuff behind the scenes, but all of these guys are human beings. They like praise. And it was good to see Rui get some from JJ. Awkward segue here, but I kind of wanted to hold off on the Anthony Davis and LeBron James aspect of the preseason to this point, because we kind of know what to expect of them. And, we know that they're really good. We saw them in the summer play for Team USA. They looked fantastic there. We've seen them so far this year. AD was the only, maybe one of a few bright spots in that Warriors game, especially with the jump shooting and stuff like that too. My buddy who writes for Bleacher Report, Andy Bailey, actually compiled all of the top whatever lists that all of these media outlets are putting together. And I believe LeBron came in roughly 8th, and Anthony Davis came in at 11th. He was behind Ant, who I think Anthony Davis is just better than right now. So by that mix of metrics, the Lakers have 2 top 10 players in the NBA. They are the next closest team to them was Boston, who had 2 top 15 players, because you had Jason Tatum up there in the top 10. You had Jaylen Brown coming in at 15th. I grew up in a certain way of basketball, and I know that the league is a little bit more complicated now. The teams are a lot smarter. Margins are hammered a lot more than it was when I was growing up watching basketball. Because if you had 2 top 10 players, you were a championship team, not hoping to make the play-in, not hoping to get not have to play in the play-in. You were a top 4 seed, period. That was the expectation. Is it as easy to just write off as it's a more complicated league now, or is that, do you think, something that kind of reflects on how the Lakers have handled the margins in the LeBron and AD era?
It's a bit of both. I think the NBA is indeed a more complicated league. I think teams are better at exploiting those margins. It's part of why we've heard JJ talk about that so much. But it's also when you look at we talk about winning in the margins, that's something the Lakers have not been known for. I mean, there's a reason why the ability to sign second round picks to a 3 or a 4 year deal is half jokingly called the Rob Pelinka rule, because the
Yeah.
Lakers they've not won in the margins. You look at the deals that they've given out. Look at just this past summer what happened with the player options, and I think that's not just in the front office. That's also happening on the floor, or has happened on the floor over the last few years. And so, yes, this team should be better. It should be better constructed, but they are still trying to recover from the sins of the Russell Westbrook trade. That is still looming over them. They still don't have a roster that completely makes sense. And I think there's definitely concerns with the way this team is put together right now, particularly with the depth. That's one of my big concerns. I don't think this is nearly as deep of a team as it was last year. But there's also some fit concerns with this team. And just the league is too good now to go into a season, particularly in the West. If they were in the East, okay, I'd feel pretty confident they're going to finish somewhere middle of the pack and be fine. But in the Western Conference, you can't have those kinds of shortcomings, especially in the playoffs. Now, once we start to get it into playoff basketball, and fingers crossed, hopefully the Lakers will be there, what teams do is they pick you apart. If you have 80 weaknesses, teams hammer those weaknesses over and over and over again. And so I think the Lakers they have too many weaknesses with the way the roster is constructed right now. And so all of those things are adding up to diminish the superstar wattage that LeBron James and Anthony Davis provide. And it's part of why when you say LeBron and AD are still, two top 10 guys, and we saw it during the Olympics, right? Are two of the very best American players. LeBron wins the MVP of the Olympics. That tells you these guys have it. And that's why this team, there's still going to be pressure on this team to sometime between now and February 6th, make a move, make moves, do something to give these guys the team that they need to go contend. And in the meantime, I think this group is just trying to keep their heads above water and stay in the mix until they can find that deal that's going to finally put these puzzle pieces together.
Yeah, you mentioned the Olympics. The Lakers were the only team represented by two players in that final five grouping, that went out and won gold medals, that played late in these games. And the other one was Boston Celtics sometimes, who were represented by Jason Tatum. And according to D'Angelo Russell 1.0, right? in Derek White. But yeah, it's such an interesting thing to watch a pair in Anthony Davis and LeBron. And by the way, LeBron still being in that conversation heading into his year 40 season is insane. Crazy. It's absolutely insane. And when people kind of see me kind of flying off of the handle, that's what I keep pointing to, is that like these guys are holding up their end of the bargain. Can we just give them a more competitive roster so that the Lakers would be in the spot that you would expect the team to be in when you have two top 10 players? And you mentioned the Russell Westbrook trade. I wrote for Clutch Points this morning. I wrote it yesterday. It went up this morning about the guard position and the issues that the Lakers have had at finding point guards basically since the 2000, the bubble title, the last time that they won. I went back and I listed all of the acquisitions at point guard and like combo guard. I included combo guards because they have given the Lakers some problems too. 2000, this little stretch here is insane. Like you don't see many stretches like this where the Lakers in 2021 acquired, not just had on their roster, but acquired DJ Augustine, Avery Bradley, Darren Collison, Malik Monk, Austin Reeves, Isaiah Thomas, Russell Westbrook, and Mac McClung. In 2022, they acquired, not just had on their team. Now you had some departures too. Patrick Beverley, Kendrick Nunn, Shaquille Harrison, Scottie Pippen Jr., D'Angelo Russell, Dennis Schroeder, Lonnie Walker IV. And then in 2023, they brought in Spencer Dinwiddie, Jalen Hood-Schifino, and Gabe Vincent. And, you look at all of that kind of turnover and all that stuff. And it seems like a team really searching for the exact kind of point guard that needs to fit there. Ironically, they let that guy walk. In Alex Caruso. What do you think has given them so many issues? Do you have a theory on what has given them so many issues at the point guard spot specifically? Because you would think having a point guard play next to a creator like LeBron James, that shouldn't be that difficult a role to fill.
Well, I mean, you need to find somebody who can hit the three, and that's been a difficult thing. Obviously, Russell Westbrook wasn't a guy who was going to do that. Dennis Schroeder had his hot streaks every now and then, but for the large part, he wasn't quite a 3-point shooter. And you also need somebody who can defend at a high level. And then you look at the situation the Lakers were backed into with Russell Westbrook, and by their own accord. And when we're talking about LeBron and AD, they've been great and give them this team. They're not blameless in the Westbrook situation as yep. well. We should note, Absolutely. But coming out of that, essentially they had the choice of we can take Mike Conley or we can pull off this other move and take D'Angelo Russell. And they went with the younger guy, and I understand the rationale behind that. But what they've done is they've created a situation where with the rise of Austin Reeves, you have two guards on the roster that now have similar weaknesses, or at least they have overlapping weaknesses. And so that's created some issues where there isn't that balance. And so they're constantly searching for that guy. They don't, we think back to say the 2020 team and the guards they had: KCP, Avery Bradley, Alex Caruso, Danny Green. These guys are not primary initiators. These guys are 3-and-D style. We're going to defend, and we're going to defend our asses off, and they're great at it, but they're not necessarily going to set up teammates. Well, the Lakers have wanted to get somebody who can set up teammates, who can initiate, so LeBron doesn't have to do all of that, but still defend, but still shoot the three. And that's, I think, just a difficult player to find. And so they're constantly trying to strike
without
this
giving
balance.
Up like a max contract. Like that.
Exactly.
The player you're talking about is the perfect modern point guard.
I mean, let's be real. We're talking about like Drew Holiday, right? Like that would be the fit. A player like that would be the fit. And finding that guy is extremely difficult. And so they're constantly just trying different things. And now you've got the issue where D'Lo and Austin, maybe the solution is Jared Vanderbilt. Maybe his defensive prowess makes that combo work a little bit better because he can make up for some of the defensive concerns of those two. But he's not been available. So now you've got, I think pretty clearly, two of your top four players in Austin and D'Lo who just don't necessarily fit perfectly together, and you don't have the one guy that probably helps that connection work a little bit better, at least on the defensive side of the ball. So it's all of that kind of combined into this mess at the guard position for the Lakers, where they're just still searching. And ultimately, I think they're going to have to make some kind of a change here if they're going to find that guy that they really need to put alongside LeBron and AD, because again, I just don't think they found the solution at this point. And I don't even think the guys that they had back in 2020 are necessarily the solution that they're looking for either. It's just the guy they need is extremely difficult to find in today's NBA.
It was funny, as part of that piece, I did a little bit of reporting on some of the targets that the Lakers had over the summer, and then some of the conversations that they've carried on since then, and then some that might continue on throughout the season. And the one that's getting the most attention is Zach LaVine. My mentions are an absolute wreck. I've had to mute like 3 different conversations this morning. And it's funny, I wrote about Zach LaVine, but the whole time I was writing about him, I was like waiting, like, hey, when's somebody going to mention Lonzo? When's somebody going to say, like, when somebody connect those dots? Because he went out and he played the other day. He made his, return to the court after 2.5 years, got a big standing ovation, knocked down his first shot, looked really, really good, like surprisingly good. And I'm kind of wondering when those dots are going to start to get connected again, because we know that Rob likes to bring guys back. We know that the Lakers love a story, and Lonzo would be a great story. That's the one, reporting aside, because I haven't heard too much buzz on that front. That's the one that I've kind of circled as the guy who now it would take a chance. You would be taking a real chance on his health, given the fact that he is coming off of a 2.5-year absence. But he's the guy who I think most fully checks all of the boxes that you're talking about. Yes. Can handle the ball, great defensively, knocks down shots, all of that stuff. Fits really well next to Austin, I think. That'll be really interesting to watch. For the meantime, though, that's not going to happen for months. For the meantime, they have to figure out a way to make this roster work. And they are going to stick with the Austin and D'Lo backcourt. JJ Redick said that, months ago or a month ago. as far as the starting five that they're going to stick with. But I've been really impressed actually by Max Christie, especially in those minutes where he's playing with four other starters and one of either D'Lo or Austin are sitting.
Mm-hmm.
I've planted my flag on, I think Max should start Island. How would you make this work, at least temporarily, between Austin and D'Lo, given like the shortcomings that we know exist? We have known exist now for a year and a half.
So I think that, first of all, the Lonzo idea is a great one. We're talking sometime in January. By the time I think teams would feel comfortable, like, okay, he's on the floor, he's playing, he's back, all that. And he even said he's not the same guy anymore. So I want to see more of him, but fantastic, his return. And you're right. If this was Lonzo a few years ago, if you could swap him out for, let's say, either D'Lo or Austin,
either one,
it's a perfect fit. It's a great fit if he can be that guy. As far as making it work right now, so with Max Christie, his skill set is better next to D'Lo than Austin's is. His skill set is better next to Austin than D'Lo's is, right? Because he can take on that primary scoring defensive option, right? He can defend the other team's best scorer at the guard position. He can spot up, shoot the three, give you that floor spacing. Doesn't need the ball in his hands to be effective. My only hesitation is he's still 21 years old. Like if we were to go, rev the DeLorean up to 88 miles per hour and go get 24, 25-year-old Max Christie and bring him back to right now, let's go. But my concern would be, unfortunately, he didn't get the opportunity to play through many of his growing pains last season. And would it be pushing him directly into the deep end to go from a very inconsistent role to now you're starting in the spotlight on a team that needs to win night in, night out in a very difficult Western Conference? Here you go, Max. That's my only concern is him biting off a bit too much, just based on his age and the experience and the fact that he is going to have some growing pains. I also think offensively, the big thing for me with Max, for him to hit that next level, he makes mistakes when he's attacking closeouts, when he's putting the ball on the floor and going towards the basket. He needs to make decisions in a split second, and that decision making just not quite there just yet. And it worries me a little bit about what that could do for the Lakers in terms of their ability to maintain an advantage on the offensive end once they get it. That's a minor thing. I like Max a lot. I think that's going to come along eventually. I think long term he can be a starter for the Lakers at the guard position. I just don't know if I want to push him into the deep end quite this soon.
Not to mention pissing off the guy that you're sending down in his place.
Absolutely.
Right?
And that's part of where Darvin lost those guys last year, was when he benched D'Lo and Austin. That was the beginning of the end, I think, for him.
Well, yeah, frankly, the beginning of the end was right at the beginning of the season.
Yes, the Torian Prince is starting. Yeah, yes, that's true.
Those guys were like, "Hold on, what?" I think it'll be interesting. It would be interesting to see how that would all play out. I'm with you. It's probably too early, especially like the teams that the Lakers are playing right at the onset to the season. You're asking Max to go through a gauntlet of primary creators on the perimeter, and you're like, "Hey, bud, good luck, 21-year-old. You're going to handle all of that stuff." So I'm with you that maybe initially it doesn't make too much sense. But what we have started to see though is LeBron is going to the bench first, and Max is coming in his place. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the look moving forward. I actually would rather them sit one of Austin or D'Lo first, and then let Max come out there and be surrounded by the amount of creation that he would be with the other four starters, rather than sitting your best creator when Max comes out and needs the offense created for him. But those are all things that the Lakers are going to kind of figure out on the fly as they continue to try to build this plane mid-flight. Trevor, this has been.
Can I ask you? Give me one. Can I ask you one thing real quickly? Because I've been thinking about this. How much do you think they're holding back right now? Just knowing that the teams they've played in preseason are the teams they're going to see largely at the beginning of the season when the games count, when the games matter. How much do you think how much more do you think we see from this team? How much is it they don't want to reveal everything right now?
I think there's some of that going on. I actually think it's a version of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But it has felt to me like they have run sets no matter what the coverage is that they're going against. And all they have to do is just tweak when they run some of the sets that they're running. And you're going to start creating better looks, right? So part of the problem that the Lakers have had is that so many of their catch and shoot opportunities have been guarded. And that has led to a real decrease in efficiency in those shots that they're taking. And I kind of wonder, so far this preseason, they've kind of gone into the game. They know that they only have like a half to run all of the sets that they need to run with the combinations that are on the court that they need to. Mm-hmm. So I've kind of wondered if they have done that. They said we need to run this 3 times, we need to run this 4 times, we need to run this however many times, and then we're going to get out of the first half, and then we'll go back and look at them in the film and stuff. And then as we get closer to the season, it'll be like, we don't have to run play X so many times. We need to run whatever needs to be run in the moment that calls for it. But I think that's an interesting tidbit here to keep an eye on, especially like you said with the LeBron team. He's in constant communication with JJ, and that he's talking JJ through some of the stuff that JJ is learning on the fly. And this might be one of those things. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's maybe a bit of wishful thinking on my part. Is that they're withholding a bunch, and that opening night we're going to see a bunch more kind of come out of them. But I think you're right. I think there is something to them kind of checking boxes, right? We're going to try this a few times. We're going to try that a few times. Let's do this. Let's do that. Whereas there's going to be a bit more flexibility once the regular season starts. That's my hope anyway, because again, you look at the record of preseason, it doesn't matter, but it does matter. They're 1-3 right now in preseason play, but my hope is that there is more to this, and they're just not wanting to show their initial opponents too much here. And then we're going to see them, as you said, kind of maybe put that final twist to some of their sets and some of their possessions, and just their play calling in general. That's going to allow this to really finally come together. So we'll see. Obviously, we won't know until Tuesday night. But that's my hope here, is that there is something that's being held back, which is not all that uncommon for teams in preseason to withhold some of their playbook at this point.
It doesn't normally happen with first-year coaches. That's normally that's the kind of thing that happens when a team in a group has been together for a little while. That would be the only thing that I would that might point to some potential wishful thinking there. But again, like I think the biggest thing, and this might be an Occam's razor point here, but I think the biggest thing is that like JJ is learning on the fly. These guys are learning to play for JJ on the fly. You don't have as many minutes as a younger team would have with its core being on the court in this preseason. And so that's going to kind of impact it too. It's going to be a fascinating season. It always is with the Lakers. If there's one thing consistent with the Lakers, is that they make our jobs and our lives very, very interesting. And Trevor, it's been a blast talking to you about these Lakers, and I'm looking forward to your coverage of them. Anything that you want to plug before we get you out of here?
No, I mean, just you can find most of my stuff over on the Lakers Nation YouTube channel, as well as the podcast feed. I think that's about it. But I appreciate you having me on, and always fun to talk Lakers basketball with you.
All right, that is going to do it here for this episode. Special bonus episode. Raj and I are going to be live after the game tonight, right here in the lounge. Look for that. And I hope you guys do check out the conversation, the other bonus episode I did with Mir and Fader earlier this week about Hakeem Olajuwon. That was also fantastic. So feels like a few hours from now, I'm Anthony Irwin. That was Trevor Lane. This has been the Lakers Lounge. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and I will talk to you guys tonight.